Welcome to Overwatch Digital Health's webinar on stimulating the vagus nerve using breath. I want to just give a quick shout out to those guys. Really just thank you for being pioneers in the world of epilepsy and seizure monitoring. It's just really a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you all on this Mother's Day Sunday morning. So I'm going to spend some time going through anatomy and physiology, and then we'll kind of get moving into the protocols and how to use them for you, or how to apply them for a loved one. So just a quick little bit about me. I am a licensed manual therapist. I'm also the Director of Clinical Research and Development at the Adaptive Training Foundation. My dad has epilepsy. I worked in behavioral health prior to my foray into the adaptive world. And you may know that there are a lot of co-occurring seizure disorders that go hand in hand with autism and things of that nature. So, and then when I got to ATF, I've been fortunate to serve a couple of individuals with epilepsy. And my Shiba Inu, my 6-year-old puppy, also has seizures. So I'm sort of surrounded by it. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about the anatomy of the vagus nerve, which is just the structure and also where it is. We'll talk about the physiology, so what it does. We'll talk about where you can feel it, the context of what we had discussed in the theories, how stimulation of the vagus nerve can help in seizure control. That's the research component, the protocol itself, and then we can open it up at the end for Q&A. So just quickly before I get into any of this, it's a disclaimer. So any information and insights related to seizure control are my own anecdotal reporting and research. These have not been tested in clinical trials or anything like that. So with any intervention, they obviously carry inherent risks. So just please consult your neurologist or a physician if you're in doubt. So the anatomy of the vagus nerve, we have to talk about what we're working with before we can really understand why these protocols work. So first off, it's all over the place. It's known as cranial nerve 10. Its name comes from the Latin word vagare, meaning wandering. It extends all the way from the head to the abdomen. So this kind of comes out just behind the ears. And you can kind of see in that illustration to the right that, especially the lower portion sort of takes the shape of the entire digestive system. So you can see, that apron looking thing is really where your large and small intestine are. Just above that is where the stomach is. And then sort of all the way up along the spine and through the esophagus and the throat and the larynx. It has branches in the head, neck, and the thorax that have roles in breathing, swallowing, regulation of heart rate, and digestion. So those are kind of our functional applications and really what we're going to be talking about a little bit more today. So applying that, when you're breathing, there's a lot of muscles involved. There's muscles in the chest, there's muscles in the abdomen, there's muscles in the neck. So some of these, and those are the ones that are just illustrated here, are around your voice box. So if you look at that muscle that's highlighted in blue, the structure that is kind of broad and white just above that is your thyroid cartilage. So that's kind of called your Adam's apple in general speaking. And it has a lot of muscles around it. As you can see, there's the green one, the yellow one, the orange one, and the blue one, which for our purposes is plenty of detail, that can control how open or closed those tubes in your neck actually are. So some of them are around your voice box, some of them are around your throat, and the vagus nerve is responsible for controlling those muscles, which help in initiating swallowing, and also in sound production. So anytime you're talking, humming, swallowing, singing, any of that, you're engaging your vagus nerve as well as the muscles that it is responsible for innervating. So we all remember this, hopefully, the diaphragm, right? So at the bottom of that soda bottle that this person in this picture is holding, that is kind of the stand-in or the stimulator for your diaphragm. So anytime that contracts, so anytime it comes down lower into your abdominal cavity, that's when your lungs expand, as you can see in the soda bottle. So that's your lungs filling with air. And by the way, it's the vagus nerve that gets stimulated through the action. So I wanted to show this to you guys. This is a really cool app here, but it apparently is not going to function with me right now. Oh boy, let's see. Okay. Hey, look at that. It cooperated. Okay, cool. So basically what I've done here, if you guys can see this, is that I have sort of selected out just the diaphragm, which is this big red and white muscular thing right there, and the vagus nerve, which is the thing that sort of looks like the cord to your headphones. So this would be the front of the diaphragm. If you were looking just at the front of another person, this is the cutout of what you would see. The reason I wanted to show this to you is because if we tilt this way, right, and now we're kind of looking up underneath the diaphragm, if we zoom in, hopefully this is cooperating on y'all's end of things, you guys can see that there are two holes. So ignore the one that has nothing in it. The one that the nerves are coming out of is called the esophageal hiatus. You do not need to remember that term, but just in case you want to know and you're an anatomy nerd, there it is. And the nerves that you see coming out of that are the thoracic branches of the vagus nerve. So the reason that I'm showing you this is because when you're breathing, these are significant portions of the vagus nerve that are being stimulated, along with, let's shrink this down just a smidge, there we go, with the branches that are more superior to that in the neck. So those are the, again, the throat and kind of the voice box, right? So let's see if this one will cooperate now. Beautiful. Okay. So this is really, it's the exact same thing, but I just wanted to give you guys a schematic of where the heart and lungs live relative to the rest of this stuff. So again, if we come up to the heart, you can see that the vagus nerve is really impacted by those major arteries that we have coming out, and also the aortic arch, which is that big white shiny thing. It kind of looks like a white rainbow. And again, so we're passing down here past the heart, past the lungs, and then through that hiatus there. And then there's just all kinds of spreading out towards the diaphragm. And as we're going to talk about as well, there's also parts of that that are responsible for talking specifically to the stomach. So we'll get right back into that. Beautiful. Okay. So this is I just threw this in here so that when you guys get this presentation, if you'd like it afterwards, you can reach out to Stephanie and she can send it to you. Okay, so we've got the anatomy down. We know where it is. The physiology, that's how things work. So really what we're interested in is how the vagus nerve relates to the parasympathetic nervous system. So fight, flight, freeze, that's sympathetic. That's the thing that gets your heart rate up. That's the thing that pushes blood out towards your extremities so that you can get ready to bolt if you need to. Parasympathetic, on the other hand, is the opposite. So that's rest, digest, and repose. And the vagus nerve is the main outflow to the thorax and abdomen. So it stimulates a reduction in resting heart rate. It increases the rate of stomach emptying and stimulates acid production. And by the way, this is the protocol that I'm going to give you guys is a wonderful, wonderful tool also to use if you're experiencing some acute digestive problems or if you are feeling nauseous. I can remember one time I was literally trapped in the Apple store while one of my devices was being repaired. excuse me, and I just got overcome with nausea, and I was like, there's no way out of this. I can't just like leave to, you know, excuse myself. So I slowed my breath down a whole bunch, and within about 5 minutes, I was back to normal again. So like I said, you can really use this outside of just the seizure protocol as well. The other thing is that, you know, there's a really intimate relationship with your vagus nerve. You've been feeling it your entire life. So anytime that you have a lump in your throat or that, you know, feeling of butterflies in your stomach, whether you're either nervous or excited, feeling something in your gut, feeling like, you know, you're having your heartstrings tugged at, anything like that are all physiological responses to circumstances or emotions we're experiencing. That's pretty obvious. The cool part is that it's the brain's interpretation of the event that makes the emotions of great excitement and great unhappiness feel very much the same in the body, because it's all one nerve, and it's the vagus nerve. So this thing controls a whole bunch. It's a broad spectrum of, again, digestion, heart rate, you know, that like way that you feel internally that you rely on to make decisions and things like that. All of that is related to the vagus nerve. Okay, so now we're kind of on to the good part here, how the stimulation of the vagus nerve can help in seizure control. So the first thing that I want to just point out is that this image is slightly unrelated, but the reason that I put it in here is because on the left-hand side, you can see that, you know, we have just kind of like a lot of green areas and some blue areas and things like that. Not a huge amount of red. By the way, the red is the amount of blood that's flowing in the brain. The right image, however, is an increase in cerebral blood flow. And that really is a piece of research that has been done on the vagal nerve stimulation devices that are implanted under the skin. While there's a lot that remains to be seen in the realm of research that determines how things are working, the assumption, anyway, being made out of that research is that vagal nerve stimulation can increase blood flow in key brain areas related to seizure activity. So the name of the game here is really neuromodulation, which is a fancy way of saying just the way that your brain fires differently in response to a specific way of breathing, right? So with the VNS that's planted under the skin, that is a change in neural activity through a targeted delivery of an electrical pulse. What we're going to be doing is just manipulating our breathing in order to achieve a similar response. Other research on the vagal nerve stimulating devices, that's what VNS is, have noted that they can help to raise levels of some neurotransmitters important in seizure control, specifically things like serotonin, which can, you know, again, bring you down into more of that state of comfort, calm, satiety, things of that nature. So it's the, you know, the neurotransmitters more associated with rest, digest, and repose. And then the VNS devices that are implanted can also help to lower the heart rate because 8 out of 10 people experience an increase in heart rate either before and or during their seizure activity. So again, the research is out there. It's not super comprehensive about the implanted devices themselves. And the reason really that I'm talking to you guys here today is because having known about this and this particular technology, my thought process was, well, why, knowing that the breath can help stimulate the vagus nerve, why can't we use this in a potential seizure reduction protocol? And you know, we've seen some very similar results from what the research is showing on VNS devices. Okay, so the protocol. As a starting point, it's 6 breaths per minute. Easy. 1 breath every 10 seconds. You're breathing in, you're breathing out, reducing your rate of breathing to 6 breaths per minute. So in the name of customizing it, because everybody with seizures is going to respond differently. Everybody without seizures is going to respond differently. And what I'm constantly encouraging folks to do, both as a fitness coach and also as a manual therapist and also as a yoga teacher, is to find the route that works best for you. So this is kind of the GPS to that. The first thing is just to watch for your auras. So if you get auras, you'll begin this protocol at the onset, the very, very onset. So in the same way that if you have migraines and you pop an Excedrin when you first start getting one coming on, it's a lot more effective than if you're, 2/3 of the way into your migraine and then it just doesn't touch it. Choose your position. So we've experienced success with people sitting, kneeling, laying down, looking at the ceiling. Really, this is based entirely on personal preference. So you might choose a position that allows your chest to be very open. You might choose a position in which you feel very much in control. You might choose a position that you can actually get into, depending on how advanced you are into your auras or your seizure. So this is really, as long as you can continue to access your breath in a really kind of intentional way, the position isn't wrong. Input and output refers to where you're breathing through. So some folks do great breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, or in through the mouth and out through the nose, only through the nose, only through the mouth. There really is not a rule here per se. So whatever you're feeling best with is what's going to work best. And look, there's a million different experts and gurus and manuals and all of that stuff out there that will tell you that you absolutely need to breathe one way or another in order to achieve whatever desired effect they're explaining to you. And I'm here to tell you that that's nonsense, which is a cleaned up word for how I really feel, by the way. But yeah, so breath is breath. You're stimulating the vagus nerve through this no matter what. And by the way, people talk about the concept of diaphragmatic breathing, which is a term that I can't stand because you can't breathe without the use of your diaphragm. Therefore, all breathing, even really rapid fire, fast paced breathing, which puts you into the fight, flight, or freeze mode, sympathetic, which by the way, can be super useful when you're doing stuff like working out or getting ready to work out. You're still using your diaphragm for that. So if that is in your vocabulary, please, if you ever talk to me, do me a favor and just remove it. You can do it when I'm not around, that's okay. But yeah, at any rate, no matter whether you're breathing through your nose or through your mouth, it will produce the same result on your diaphragm is basically the takeaway there. So choose your cadence. 6 breaths per minute is really easy for me to recommend because it's been shown through research, which by the way, you're gonna get at the end of this presentation, to regulate the rest, digest, and repose response, which again is that parasympathetic response. So you can play with the length of your in-breath, how long you hold at the top, the length of your out-breath, and how long you hold at the end. Some people are super comfortable breathing in and then holding for an extended time. Other people are much more comfortable with empty lungs, and I happen to fall into that latter category. It's much more comfortable for me to sit with an out-breath than it is for me to hold an in-breath. So again, the name of the game here, guys, is that this needs to work for you. So if any part of this feels really uncomfortable or like it's not working, then stop and revisit it. Try something else. So the really important thing here though, is that you'll continue this protocol until your auras and any other symptoms of your seizure have gone. Also, if you're keeping your own data, it might be useful or interesting for you to invest in an oximeter, which is just the little thing that you stick your finger in. They're like, $25 over Amazon, to track your oxygen saturation levels during the protocol. And also, of course, if you have a helper on hand, because when you're about to head into a seizure, the last thing that you're thinking about probably is data collection, unless you're a dedicated neurologist yourself or just a real data nerd. So, okay, so here's the research that was cited. So the 6 breaths comes out of that first article, the effect of rosary prayer and yoga mantras on autonomic cardiovascular rhythms. pretty fascinating. It's not super dense. It's a pretty good read, and it just talks about why 6 breaths per minute is sort of the golden ratio, if you will. The next one is called The Breath of Life, Respiratory Vagal Stimulation Model of Contemplated Activity. So very similar to the first one. And then if you really want to kind of dive in deep on the Teach Me Anatomy portion of this, so that, you know, if you really want to know all of the different branches of the vagus nerve and where it goes and what it touches and the organs and muscles that it innervates, teachmeanatomy.info is a wonderful website for that. And I couldn't believe that I was actually able to find an anatomy joke centered around the vagus nerve. I was so thrilled. And of course, if you have been in any presentations that I've given before, you know that there's anatomy puns liberally sprinkled in. But since we only had a half an hour, I saved it for the end. So with that, I will, let's see, attempt to close out of this. Oh, there's just this last one though. It's just a thank you to Overwatch Digital Health for hosting. And then you guys are also free to email me, Gina at teamatf.org. I've got so many addresses there now that I forget which ones I give out.